Hi there. Welcome to another Instagram Live conversation. I'm Marta Abawaji. I'm the head of community engagement at Springtide Research Institute, and we are so excited for today's conversation. We're going to be speaking with the host and creator of Eat, Pray, Anime. I see that she's even in the chat right now, so let's bring her right in. Welcome to Kaitlyn. She's a PhD student studying all things Japanese pop culture media. Hi, Kaitlyn.
Hey there.
I'm Marta. I'm so glad to connect with you beyond email.
It's so great to meet you in person. Hi.
Thanks for taking time today. I said like one sentence about your work, but I'll just let you take it from here. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you're studying, what got you even interested in the first place in all things Japanese pop culture and religion.
Sure. So hi, everybody. As you heard, my name is Kaitlyn Ugretz. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And as you heard, I am into all things anime, video games, comics, manga, graphic novels. It started when I was younger, so I'm right on the line between millennial and Gen Z.
Perfect.
But I grew up watching like Pokemon. This little guy was my best friend for a while.
Love it.
And I grew up on watching Studio Ghibli films. And just for a little bit of background, my father is a Protestant, a Presbyterian minister. So we would watch cartoons on Saturday and then go to church on Sunday. So, you know, I had both of these things in my life. And eventually I got interested in studying religion from a pop culture perspective. I wrote for a YouTube channel. It's pretty famous, called Religion for Breakfast, run by my friend Dr. Andrew Mark Henry. He wanted to start building in information about world religion. So his specialty is ancient Christianity. And he also grew up watching Ghibli films. So he said, hey, Kaitlyn, why don't you come write a 5-episode series about Shinto for my channel? And I had never done anything YouTube video before. I grew up very shy. I've gotten over that in the time in between. But the series was so popular. Within an hour, tens of thousands of people had watched my first video about Shinto. I only get to teach students maybe like 20 to 100 at a time. Sure. So to reach so many people at once was amazing. And then reading the comments, people were saying, oh, this reminds me, I didn't know that Shinto god's name was in this anime Naruto that I like. I had no idea there was a connection there. And people kept saying, oh, there are all these connections I've never seen before. So instead of taking over my friend Andrew's channel, I decided to start my own YouTube channel called Eat, Pray, Anime. So it's a blend of all of the things I love and that other people also enjoy, and then trying to inject some academic research into there to help teach people about Japanese religion and history and culture, just like a little bit more than you can get off of Wikipedia.
That is so helpful. I didn't know all those pieces, even though I've been doing some reading and research into what you do. I didn't know that whole journey of what led you to start it. How long ago was that then? How long have you had the YouTube channel?
So Eat, Pray, Anime has been running for 2 years now, and we just passed the 2,000 subscriber mark, which was very exciting.
Congrats.
But basically, Eat, Pray, Anime is something that I started in my parents' kitchen in the middle of the pandemic when we were all under lockdown. And then I graduated from shooting in my kitchen to like a church basement, and now I've set up a home studio.
Yeah, I see you're like in front of a green screen right now, right?
Yeah, I had figured out how to do the green screen thing yesterday, but it looks like maybe it doesn't work in live, which is fine.
Well, it still shows how legit you are to have like a home studio. So, well, I mean, this conversation is so exciting because Springtide is committed to understanding all different forms of spirituality and all different ways that Gen Zers are practicing and engaging spirituality, and anime is is clearly a form that we need to dig into and to understand more about. You know, we often ask young people how art and art can show up in so many different ways is a part of their spiritual practices. So you're getting to see firsthand from the conversations you're having with your YouTube channel how people are engaging this art form in new ways, and you're providing that on ramp. Like you said, a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of some of the spirituality that's interwoven into some of their favorite animes. So what is involved with the show, with the episodes that you produce? Like, do people submit questions? Do you just, you know, go off of something you're currently researching? I'd love to know more about what brings about the different topics that you cover.
Sure. So, as a PhD researcher, I'm just reading tons of books and articles all the time about different things in Japanese religion, trying to stay up on like what my friends are researching. And so, with Eat, Pray Anime, I noticed that there are a lot of other YouTube channels that kind of try to go into the lore and stuff behind a lot of anime and games that people enjoy. But a lot of the information is either out of date or not very nuanced, or you know, just kind of something they picked up from Wikipedia. So
Okay.
I try my best to start with the research and then find the, as you said, the on ramp through anime to teach about that. So I'm starting with the work that I really enjoy. For example, I've mentioned on my channel many times Drawing on Tradition, which is a book by my colleague, Dr. Julian Thomas, about religion and spirituality in anime. And I will pick out, you know, ideas from those articles and then try to explain them through the lens of anime. But it also kind of goes back and forth, because when I'm watching something, I will think, I'm not sure what that is, but I bet I can go find out. Or I know exactly what that is. I'd like to teach people what's going on here. I do come up with some episodes based on what people write in the comments. I always want to know, you know, what anime is really speaking to people. It changes like from season to season. So the anime that I grew up on is not the same anime that, you know, Gen Z has grown up on.
Sure.
And so I'm always looking for recommendations to kind of broaden my own horizons and turn that into a video.
I love that. I love that you're like, this is already my passion and I'm already teaching this, and now I get to have a much wider audience. So as an anthropologist of religion even, we know that you're always looking for different themes, because that's your expertise, that's your field. And so unpacking spirituality is something that comes naturally to you, or is such a passion for you, like you said. But I'm wondering, for those who maybe just dabble in anime, or even those who watch it frequently, would you say that anime broaches spiritual themes directly, or is it more in the background and the average viewer wouldn't necessarily pick up on those themes, so they maybe need a guide like you to unpack them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really depends. Because anime is a genre of, you know,
Right.
cartoons, there's a lot of variation between individual titles or franchises. So I can give you an example of like both sides of the spectrum.
Great.
So there's this one manga, a comic book that was then turned into an anime called Saint Young Men. The basis of the story is that the Buddha and Jesus Christ are roommates on holiday in Japan.
Wow.
And
So it's already explicit.
very nobody's going to miss the religious overtones and themes of that anime. And they get into all kinds of hijinks based on, you know, their own religious traditions and things like that. There's this one scene where the Buddha is like just taking a nap, and all of these birds and animals come and gather around him, which is a tableau that's often seen in Buddhism, where the Buddha attains enlightenment. And it's really funny because he shoos all the animals out of his house, and he's like, no, I'm not passing into enlightenment. I'm just taking a nap.
Oh.
So if you're familiar with these Buddhist stories, then it's funnier. So some context is required there. Other anime are more subtle about like the spiritual themes. It may not be like a big part of the plot, but more like just some flavor or an aspect of everyday life living in Japan. There's another really popular anime called Love Live, which is about a group of high school girls who start an idol group singing. And one of the ensemble characters works at a Shinto shrine. So they often go to that shrine in the show to practice, and they see their friend, you know, doing her part-time job at the shrine. So like Shinto is not very important to the story of Love Live, but you get to see like what does a shrine look like? What do people do
Sure.
there?
Yeah.
And so that's also a useful way for me to say, okay, have you never been to Japan? This is what a Shinto shrine looks like. Like, let's talk about what happens there. So it can really go both ways,
Sure.
and providing context is really key. I think it makes enjoying all of these shows even more enjoyable when you know the background.
Oh, those examples are so helpful, from the more explicit to the more subtle. The fact that you're picking up on all different themes across many different religious traditions, clearly,
Mm-hmm.
that some viewers with all different backgrounds, coming from many different faith traditions, are getting such a rich uh, history, because you're able to provide so much cultural and religious context. I love that. For those who don't know, Springtide's research is focused on Gen Z. And so I'm sure you have followers who are from multiple generations, but we're most curious about the ways that young people ages 13 to 25 um, experience or explore a sense of meaning and community and identity. So clearly these themes are so palpable with the same trajectory of what you're exploring with Eat Pray Anime. I'm wondering, how long has anime been seen as a medium for young people to explore spirituality? I mean, you really tapped into something here, and so I'm just curious if you have a sense if there's certain shows that kicked this off, or if it's just kind of always been a part of the art form, and now you're just helping unearth it.
Sure. So a little bit about the history of anime. It really started as a genre as we think of it now in the 60s, but a lot of anime didn't come over, for example, to the United States until the 70s and the 80s. And then it really took off when anime was being broadcast instead of shared on, now the audience might not remember, VHS tapes.
Right,
Which
right.
were before DVDs, which are also now on their way out.
Yes,
Definitely before streaming. We didn't have
right.
a lot of anime to work with, so you kind of just took what you could get. So definitely since the 90s, we've seen engagement with anime in a spiritual way. So a little bit of context about where I'm coming at this question from. My dissertation research focuses, so I'm writing a book basically for my PhD. That's what a dissertation is. And it's about online religious communities that are dedicated to the Japanese religion called Shinto. So I'm really interested in how people from all over the world have heard about Shinto and then decided to start practicing it as a ritual tradition. And one of the common factors I've seen within the community is a love for anime.
Mm.
And within these online communities, they'll actually, people will talk amongst themselves saying, I really liked the portrayal of a shrine in this show, or I learned about this Shinto concept, or I first heard about Shinto from watching, for example, Inuyasha, which was a very popular anime, which has kind of made a resurgence. So Inuyasha is definitely a big one. There are folkloric and also spiritual elements in the show, so it's really fun to watch. There's a lot of like, you know, magic fights and things like that. But people have actually pulled out from that show some really key concepts and gone and done their own research and discovered, oh, this is Shinto. I want to learn more about that. The same thing can be said for Studio Ghibli films. Hayao Miyazaki's movies, but also his partner in crime, who often gets forgotten. His name is Isao Takahata. Together, they've made a lot of films like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro that have really kind of defined my generation as millennials, and also for Gen Z folks, a lot of us have grown up watching Miyazaki movies, and there are a lot of spiritual, if not explicitly Shinto elements in it, like forest gods and spirits that live in nature, and all kinds of creatures that inspire, you know, mystery and awe. And so these are some of the touchstones that people come to Shinto with. And but since anime is always constantly changing, these days I just finished teaching my intro to Japanese popular culture class at UC Santa Barbara, and my students were more interested in talking about things like Demon Slayer, which has ritual dancing in it, and different kinds of, you know, monsters, and Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a show also about like exorcisms and magical creatures. So there's always new anime coming out that are like refreshing this interest in Japanese spirituality, but you can really see it start in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Oh, that history is so helpful. And I hope as you're working on your dissertation that a lot of people can't access it, because the work you're doing to make these connections is clearly benefiting a lot of people. You have followers who are so riveted with the new episodes you produce, and the new the new ways you're providing connections in an art form that people love so much. So I'm wondering about kind of this sense of community with your followers, because it really seems like, you know, as I look at comments on some of your videos, it seems like there's people who are really finding commonality with fellow subscribers that share some of their same interests and passions. And I saw in your summer update video that you were recently awarded a grant from the Henry Luce Foundation and the American Academy of Religion. So big congrats on that. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And I also saw that you're starting a book club with your audience as well. So I'm wondering how do you seek to foster this sense of community and connection among Eat, Pray, Anime subscribers? Or is that even something you're looking to do beyond providing this educational space?
Sure. So one of the things I learned about YouTube early on is that community is really key for building a channel. It's a really different experience from just like lecturing to a classroom of people, and I often don't get to make personal connections with them. Maybe they don't come to office hours, or you know, they've got to run to their next class. So I do want to, of course, try to build a community within the classes that I teach, but eventually my students will either finish the course or graduate, and then that's the end of the discussion. But there's so much more to talk about. You know, working at UC Santa Barbara, our quarters are only 10 weeks long, so we can't cover that much material. And I'm fully aware that there are so many people who don't have room in their schedule to take a class about Japan. You know, if you're an econ major, your parents are like, what are you doing, you know, every week talking about anime? Or the college might not teach Japanese studies, or college might not be a good fit for some people in the first place. So I want to create a space online where we can come together regularly and talk about things that we enjoy, and then use that as a springboard to learn more about religion and Japan, and also ourselves through reflection. So I create the videos and people watch them one-on-one, but then a lot of the community happens in the comments, and then on other platforms. So for example, I have a exclusive Discord community for my Patreon supporters, and we have a lot of conversations in there for like book recommendations and what are you playing these days, and you know, we talk about all different kinds of things relating to Japan and anime. On my channel, I use the term Japan fans. At the beginning of every video, I go, "What's up, Japan fans? It's your pal Kay." I created, or you know, I imagined this term in opposition to other terms that often get used to talk about anime fans. People use terms like otaku or weeb, which are either really gatekeepy, like you have to have encyclopedic knowledge of anime to be a real fan, or particularly like the term weeb implies that somebody's like really orientalist and has these fantasies about Japan, but doesn't really understand, you know, reality. So I want to get away from all of that and say, you know, everybody can be a fan of Japan in some way. And, you know, we can all kind of get together and learn something new without trying to like kick people out of the community or making fun of people.
Oh, I love the wide net and the way you're really seeking to be inclusive. I mean, I have friends and family all around the world, so many different ethnicities, ages, you know, all different kinds of people who like anime and who like manga. I'm wondering, is there a certain type of person, like a certain profile, whether that's religiously or generationally, that you see gravitating towards anime, or is it this wide net that just encompasses all different types?
Yeah, so it is a pretty wide net, but I think that there are some common denominators that we can talk about. So to go back to my research with online Shinto communities, in terms of generationality, it does go back to Gen X at least, and we have folks in the community, yeah, from Gen X to Gen Z, and I guess whatever kind of comes next. Yeah. So within these online communities, I've done some survey work as part of my anthropological study. And a lot of the people in the community do identify as spiritual but not religious, SBNR.
Yeah.
But then there's also a good portion of the community who have come to practice Shinto because they didn't feel connected to the religion of their household that they grew up in. Oftentimes fundamentalist or evangelical communities. And there is a significant queer community within online Shinto that have found something that speaks more to them than the traditions that they've grown up in. People also identify as like kind of hybrid religious identities. Yeah. So I've had people tell me, I'm Buddhist Shinto, I'm Christian Shinto, or I'm neo-pagan Shinto. So there is a lot of diversity within the community. A lot of the folks who seem attracted to Japanese spirituality and anime also tend to participate in other Japanese cultural activities like martial arts. So for example, if you took Aikido, a lot of times there's a little Shinto altar on a wall somewhere. And so people are finding out about Shinto through these other cultural activities. And finally, there's a really strong sentiment that Japanese culture and spirituality have lessons to teach us about living in harmony with nature. Mm-hmm. And so it appeals to people who are, you know, strongly value environmentalism. How grounded in fact and practice that is debatable, but there's definitely an idea that Shinto is like a green religion that is welcoming to people of kind of all different backgrounds.
Oh, those different profiles are so helpful, and it really sparks my curiosity because that's a lot of what Springtide studies. Our annual report last year, The State of Religion and Young People 2021, Navigating Uncertainty, looked at a lot of what you're describing when you were talking about different hybrid sense of identity when it comes to a spiritual identity that young people are self proclaiming. We really want to understand this concept that we look at called faith unbundled, and it's a lot of what you were defining just now, that young people especially are turning to this wide range of traditions and practices and beliefs when they're asking different questions about faith and religion. And young people who identify as religious on our surveys, they don't necessarily participate in religion in the traditional sense. A lot of what you were saying too, of people who say the religion of my household or my background isn't what necessarily I ascribe to now. That's a lot of Faith Unbundled. It really just describes the ways that young people are constructing and sometimes deconstructing their faith by combining often elements. So they're debundling and rebundling to find what feels really true and authentic for them, be it beliefs or identity or practices, rituals, different communities. So yeah, those come from a variety of religious as well as non-religious sources, instead of it all being from one single intact religion or system. So this Faith Unbundled approach, you've already touched on it a bit, but is there anything else that you've observed about this idea of Faith Unbundled that you can speak to, either with your students or from people within the Eat, Pray, Animate community?
Sure. So this Faith Unbundled concept is really interesting. It does resonate a lot with the research that I've been doing, but it also resonates with just the history of religion outside of the US bubble. So this concept of like religious hybridity or syncretistic faiths, you know, having different elements come together in kind of a new mix has been happening for thousands of years. And this is one of the reasons why learning about Japanese religion, I think, is so useful, even if you're not interested in practicing it yourself, is that exactly this kind of lack of personal identification with a single tradition that is, you know, bounded, like it's packaged, this is what Buddhism is, you know, has never really been that important in Japan. It's there's this popular phrase that's it's a little debatable, but that people in Japan are born Shinto, marry Christian, and die Buddhist. So it's this idea that there are different like ritual traditions for different stages in your life or the concerns that you have. And so I think that's appealing to young people these days, as well as within like the United States. These like long held family affiliations with a particular often Christian tradition are seem to be breaking down, or our ideas about like what religion is and how we identify with that in surveys has changed. When I did my own surveys with online Shinto communities, I had a lot of things like, do you identify as religious? Here's a list of terms. And I actually got a lot of feedback from the community saying, you know, this makes us feel a little weird. Like, just let us have a text box and we'll type in what's important to us. So I think there is a resistance to fitting people in little boxes. And I think that's great for exploring other religious traditions.
Man, that connection to what is true has been true for Japan and Japanese culture for much longer than, you know, Gen Z's current iteration of this is really helpful to hear. Particularly looking at Gen Z, they're really embodying this more than previous generations, especially speaking to the U.S. context. And our forthcoming annual report that's just about to release next month in October, The State of Religion and Young People 2022, with a focus on mental health this year, we found that nearly half of young people, 48%, they told us that they could, I want to make sure I get it right, they feel like they could fit in with many different religions and spiritualities. And so it's not even just an appreciation or a curiosity, that's there too, but the fact that they could almost could fit in with a number of different religions and spiritualities shows that, yeah, so much of what you're illustrating is really you know, exacerbated as younger generations are coming to in the US, that it's not just, oh, this is what my family did, so that's what I am. There's so much more that young people are considering themselves religious and spiritual, but they're not have an easy checkbox to click, or an affiliation isn't so, you know, neat and tidy. It's many different things, and it's evolving. So I think your channel and your research is showing this in such profound ways, and you touched on this a bit, but when it comes to engaging anime as a spiritual practice, are there any other trends that you want to speak to in terms of building upon what you've already offered? Because we really are fascinated by that, that young people are defining religion in new ways?
Let's see. Well, one thing I haven't mentioned is since I tend to focus on Shinto communities, I do want to acknowledge that there are people from other religious traditions who also engage with anime and spirituality. Two that I'm a big fan of are there's a podcast called Religiously Nerdy, which is run by three Muslim women of color. And so they talk about their own faith through the lens of anime. There's also a blog website that I've written for called Beneath the Tangles, which explores anime and Christian theology. So I think it's amazing that anime can be this touchstone for multiple faiths, and we can all, watch the same episode and maybe respond to themes in a similar way, or have completely different interpretations.
Yes.
And that's really exciting. Scholarship hasn't really caught up with this trend yet that people are doing. So I'm hoping that, as we start to talk more publicly about, religion and popular media like anime, we'll be able to have more of these conversations and kind of bridge between the different religious communities. Yes. One more thing, if we have time, is that something I'm really interested in is people using anime for what's called virtual tourism. So in recent 2 years or so, the Japanese border has been closed due to COVID-19, and we've all kind of been stuck in our houses. The two anime streaming sites, Funimation and Crunchyroll, which are now combining into one mega streaming platform, their numbers for people watching anime just like went through the roof. So many people were watching anime. And I've noticed in the online Shinto communities that watching anime can kind of serve as a way of virtually traveling to a shrine or a sacred place. There are only maybe 4 shrines in the continental United States, for example. But if you want that feeling of, being in the forest or seeing the shrine and like the magnificent gate, one of the ways that you can do that is through like virtually experiencing it by watching anime. So I think that as VR becomes a larger thing with Gen Z and future generations, it's going to be really interesting to see how, anime and these virtual experiences of Japan change the way that we relate to religion.
Oh man, I'm so glad you provided that last example, because that almost previews where we're going in the future with our research, because we really want to start looking more and more at all different spaces and places, be it in person or virtual, that young people are accessing a sense of community and spirituality. So that virtual tourism piece, especially not just for the difficulty of traveling to Japan, but you're right, with the expansion of virtual reality, how much more that allows people to get an experience that they might not otherwise be able to have from their own home even. So thank you for illustrating that. Man, you have tons of great examples, and this has been a really fun conversation. Thank you for taking time today, Kaitlyn. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you and make sure they're tuning in?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So you can follow me on Twitter at Kaitlyn Ugrutz. It's long to spell. I can put it in the comment box. And you can also follow me on Twitter and here at Eat Pray Anime. On Twitter, it's eat_pray_anime, because somebody had already taken that title.
Oh, really?
But it's just at Eat Pray Anime here on Instagram.
Yes.
And of course, you can find me on YouTube at Eat Pray Anime. So I hope you'll all tune in.
Awesome. Well, I've learned a ton today, and I'm sure our followers have as well. If you're just learning about Springtide Research Institute for the first time today, you can find us across social media at We Are Springtide. And all of our research, many of the reports that I've referenced today, you can even find for free on our website, springtideresearch.org. Thanks again, Kaitlyn, and look forward to what's to come on your channel.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.